Paradise, Surviving Paradise, the podcast that takes a sometimes serious, oftentimes humorous look at the body of Jehovah's Witnesses that they are living in a modern day spiritual paradise. I'm a former witness myself, Stacy Bauman, used to be an elder, ministerial servant, and a little guy raised as a Jehovah's Witness in the 70s and 80s, rapidly becoming a unique generation. As I do, just a quick warning. We try to have some fun here. We try to heal. We get serious. We get sad. We have some laughs. Please note, it is never meant to offend. Thank you for being here. I want to spend the next hour or so speaking directly to people's hearts. I'm going to make it my best effort, particularly younger Jehovah's Witnesses that may have stumbled into this dark part of paradise. I'll get into what I mean by young. The definition's going to evolve throughout this conversation, but no matter your age, please stay. Podcasting feels a lot like a one-way conversation, because it is. I can only ask that you open up your hearts to consider a few things this week, since I can't hear you and you're bravely listening to me. And just to establish a comfort level and a comfortable environment for any Jehovah's Witness that is bravely listening, let's start with something that they're familiar with to set the tone. From the Insight on the Scriptures, Volume 1, page 1057, the faithful and discreet slave have told Jehovah's Witnesses this, quote, "In the great majority of its occurrences in the Scriptures, the word heart is used figuratively. It is said to stand for the central part in general, the inside, and so for the interior man as manifesting himself in all his various activities, in his desires, affections, emotions, passions, purposes, his thoughts, perceptions, imaginations, his wisdom, knowledge, skill, his beliefs and his reasoning, his memory and his consciousness. So in the Scriptures, the figurative heart is not confined to being the seat of affection and motivation, nor is it limited to the intellect. Among the Semites, all that was peculiar to man in the category of feelings, as well as intellect and will, was attributed to the heart. It is the sum total of the interior man as opposed to the flesh, which is the exterior and tangible man." End quote. The Insight book there, quoting the metaphorical use of the names of parts of the body in Hebrew and in Akkadian. Please check it out in the Watchtower Library. And now for a disclaimer. You don't know me from Adam. I venture a guess that almost no one that listens knows who I am personally. I will only say this. I am not a mental health professional. I'm not a doctor. I don't have a PhD. I don't have any of those credentials. I'm simply the same guy that introduces himself at the outset every week on this show. Just a guy who grew up a Jehovah's Witness and spent most of my life inside the organization. My single mother was baptized in 1972, and from that point on, my younger brother and younger sister and I were raised as Jehovah's Witnesses. I personally left the organization in February 2009, though my heart kind of had its hand on the exit door for a couple of years prior. And now, as an update, both of my siblings no longer associate with Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm 57 years old, which is very hard to say, I might add. I still can't wrap my head around that. The vast majority of people that leave Jehovah's Witnesses never plan to spend time looking back or bashing the organization. I can say that pretty conclusively. Most of us that share our experience in some way regarding our time as Jehovah's Witnesses have no ulterior motives. We're not trying to create a new cult or form our own religion. We're not trying to be famous. You'll notice I don't show my face, not because I'm afraid to, but because there's no reason to. I'm not interested in that. You'll notice that this silly little show does not ask for money in any way or try to make a living sharing this dirt and the secrets of Jehovah's Witnesses. Never hear it here. I've never had any interest in any of that, and I never will. As I've mentioned before, I rarely spoke about my experience as a Jehovah's Witness for over 10 years. I simply went about life. Some of the best years, I might add, of my life. I traveled the world. I met lots of great people. And I healed. So you might be asking, why the heck are you doing this, Stacy? And why are you telling me this? It's time for me to bare my soul a little bit. Some people, those of us that leave, not everyone, but some, feel the need and truly want to help other people. Sharing our own knowledge or experiences is really the only way to turn that lemon that is Jehovah's Witnesses into lemonade. And candidly, many who get associated with Jehovah's Witnesses are people that have a natural inclination to help others anyway. I don't think I'm saying anything that surprises anyone. Good people want to help others. And that feeling doesn't go away for most of us. We still want to help other people, even strangers. It's a harsh reality that when you reach middle age, as I have, can't believe that, I still feel like I'm 19, you have choices to make. When it comes to our personal history with Jehovah's Witnesses, you grapple with the realization that you were duped, you were fooled. And you can either lay down and cry about it, which is okay, nothing wrong with that, did a little bit of that, or you can move on, did that too, and you can forget about it. That is a choice. Or, in some people's case, and the reason for this conversation, you can try to help other people, younger people, to reach their full potential in life, to avoid the trap, to avoid the misery, to avoid the mental health issues, the depression. And as we know in this religion, for some, it can even mean avoiding death itself when feeling hopeless or when someone is in need of blood. So for all of those reasons, this week, I want to speak directly to younger Jehovah's Witnesses. Yes, what comes next can help any Jehovah's Witness, no matter the age, wake up from this scam. But I want to emphasize those that have their whole life ahead of them. I was really inspired and thought a lot about this all week by several DMs I've received over the past few weeks from younger people, which absolutely mean the world to me. I love it. And they really touched my heart with their messages. It reminded me of the swirling mess in my own heart when considering what to do with your life and what to do with this whole J-Dub experience. And after years away and many conversations, I've landed on a few things for younger Jehovah's Witnesses to consider when they find themselves facing the decision about their future with this organization. And I don't come about this lightly. They seem to be the same commonalities with people, the same. It's not like we're all so different that we don't have the same questions or the same roadblocks that may keep us from pursuing something different, from not wasting any more time. Those roadblocks seem to always fall under certain headings, and I want to tackle those for a younger Jehovah's Witness that is bravely listening. It's no secret that the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses are passionate about trapping young people in their organization. And I have to tell you, as a middle-aged guy now, this isn't new. This isn't a brand new strategy. The tools have changed, but the strategy's the same. As a kid, I had the My Book of Bible Stories, the former hardcover yellow version, thrust into my hands at a very young age, and those illustrations did wonders for my overactive imagination. And I know I'm not alone, they also did a lot for my fears. They were some doozies. My very first Bible study as a young person was with a very kind, well-meaning brother. He was an elder at the time, and he conducted it with me as a fatherless boy In the Your Youth Getting the Best Out of It book, some of us will remember that, not the younger J-Dubs, but it was the blood red bomber from the late 1970s, where my prepubescent brain was introduced to how bad all of my school friends were. Yeah, remember this? From Your Youth Getting the Best Out of It, 1976, page 65, I was told this, quote, association with non-Jehovah's Witness kids should be limited to trying to convert them, end quote. There will be no tree climbing, building forts, or riding bikes with your buddies down the street. If you talk to them, you must get them to the Kingdom Hall. But I'm only 9 or 10. Doesn't matter. How about this? As a kid that loved sports, it was here that thoughts of my family coming to my games, watching me play football and basketball or anything else were soon completely shattered. From the Your Youth Getting the Best Out of It, page 118, I was told, quote, the Watchtower Society agrees with the psychologist who says Little League Baseball should be avoided. Too competitive, end quote. And so, from the tender age of 9, I equated what the Watchtower Society and the youth book and this brother thought, notice that in the reference, with what the only invisible father I ever had, he was up there in the sky, I couldn't see him, but I was told he was there, what he thought about sports. But why be disappointed? Hold tight, he threw me a bone. In the same youth book, he said this, page 123, quote, non-team competition you can play includes hiking, wow, handball, and badminton or pitching horseshoes, end quote. And let me tell you, for you youngsters out there, at this age, I was so relieved. I was a little boy filled with energy who wanted to play ball. Let me tell you, couldn't do it, but there were a lot of people's kids in my class and neighborhood who were really interested in playing badminton or throwing horseshoes with me in the late 1970s in California. It was all the rage, let me tell you. No, it was not. The concrete jungle I grew up in had horseshoe pits everywhere. No, it did not. But this was the kind of counsel they were giving young people, as young as prepubescent kids. And if you doubt any of this or find it hard to understand, there is always this. From the Watchtower of 1982, January 15th, page 21, paragraph 14, where we were told, quote, do you find God's Word and the Watchtower publications that explain it interesting? Or do you think they are hard to understand? If you find them hard to understand, my book of Bible stories will help you to get the whole history of the Bible in the right order. It will help you to fit things together and grasp them more easily. Then, the book, Your Youth Getting the Best Out of It, will help you to understand Bible principles that will add to joy in your life. The more you learn, the easier learning will become, and you will want to prepare deeper material, including the Watchtower lesson, the material for the Theocratic Ministry School, and the weekly Bible reading. You cannot do this all in one day, but you can develop spiritual maturity if you set individual goals and progress step by step toward knowledge and ability. End quote. There it is. You just want to play ball. You're 9 or 10 years old. No. Get into my book of Bible stories and the youth book. This is the late 70s after all. And then you will grow more mature where you can do the Watchtower at 3. It's insane. The strategy's never changed. It's always been this way. And yes, a young Jehovah's Witness can learn all about life from my book of Bible stories. Please don't threaten to cut babies in half like Solomon did, or throw OnlyFans models out the window like they did to Jezebel. That's where I learned about it, my book of Bible stories. Otherwise, it's a great book. It's a fantastic book. And as for the famous Blood Red Youth book that I've mentioned here that helped grow me up, well, I'll let this counsel speak for itself. From the Your Youth book, chapter 5, page 39, we got the incredibly wise and accurate counsel from the slave that says this, quote, "In fact, masturbation can lead into homosexuality. In such instances, the person, not satisfied with his lonely sexual activity, seeks a partner for mutual sex play." End quote. Wow. I may have been looking at that photo of Victoria Principal in the late 70s in that bikini, but it didn't matter. I was on my way to wanting the Hardy Boys. That's what the youth book taught me. I seriously have no words looking back at this. And by the way, side point, I had no idea what masturbation even was until this book. And that is throwing myself under the bus. True story. No clue what they were talking about. But enough about me. We're done here. This conversation is a message to younger Jehovah's Witnesses, not just kids, just younger. And these are but a few examples from my life on how the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses seeks to control and has always sought to control young people early in their development in the organization. I could spend hours sharing examples and no doubt individual stories on the devastation we all experienced as younger Jehovah's Witnesses. They want people early in life. They want your life. Pick an age. Frankly, had I known I was already a little enemy of God, as Stephen Lett said in recent years, I would have actually been relieved back then and just went ahead and did what I wanted anyway. I was already a bad guy, according to Stephen, if I had only known. But when I say here that I want to address young people, I don't just mean kids. And bear with me this week. This is a brain dump. I'm just going to be very blunt. This is a brain dump inspired by some incredible DMs, as I mentioned, about younger people and the struggle they're going through. I am again 57 years old. Being a young Jehovah's Witness to me means 20s, 30s, 40s, and even 50s. It's everybody younger than me. That's how it works. It means anyone that is having doubts that bravely wandered into this podcast. You might be scared. I see it. I read it. I see the fear. You might be hurting. I see it. I read it. It might even be someone that has left their version of paradise and is wrestling with the wild range of emotions right now of things like, should I go back? Maybe I was wrong. What if they're right about Armageddon? Something doesn't feel right, and it's not the new hair growing on my chin. Something just isn't right here. You may be struggling with such a wide array of emotions and thoughts and questions. Jehovah's Witnesses want you to believe that they are your future, that they gave you purpose in life, even as your mind may be fighting against that, and you know something's off. And I know anyone listening who is really struggling knows this stuff. They're thinking, well, yeah, that's actually why I stumble in here and I'm listening to this thing. But I think it's important to mention to anyone and everyone how it is that you've gotten to this point. And it's because you've been conditioned. You've been fed this stuff, no matter the age, on a regular basis throughout your time in the org. And I guess from my standpoint, I want to emphasize that those of us that have broken free truly understand where you might be on your personal journey with Jehovah's Witnesses. And more importantly, you're safe here. You're safe. There's no wrong answers. I'm going to get this out of the way as early as possible. Time is your most valuable currency. It's everything. and you should look at it as such. So if those of us that have left their spiritual paradise can do anything for you on this journey, it's giving you a few things to think about. And when I consider those many private conversations, experiences, and notes that I've received over the years, as I mentioned earlier, and I know I'm being repetitive, but it's just a brain dump, you begin to recognize patterns. Patterns I myself grappled with when I decided to leave paradise. And so I want to consider a few. And please, take away from this what you will and give it deeper thought, or trash it because it doesn't mean anything to you. But I want to encourage you to think about it. There's some commonalities, some patterns. Research it. Feel it. What follows now are some common themes I want younger Jehovah's Witnesses to think about. And I want to start with this one. We'll call it number one. If you're considering leaving the organization, it will not be easy. Okay, thank you, Captain Obvious. I know. And I do wish it was easy, but it's not. I just want to validate it. If the prospect of leaving has you terrified, no one is surprised, especially if you were born into Jehovah's Witnesses. According to psychologists, this may really interest you. Hopefully it does. This dynamic actually has a name. It's called RTS, which is an acronym and stands for Religious Trauma Syndrome. A recognized expert in the field, Dr. Marlene Winnell, defines RTS as a function of both the chronic abuses of harmful religion and the impact of severing one's connection with one's faith and faith community. It can be compared to a combination of PTSD and complex PTSD. End quote. You can minimize this, but you shouldn't. This is downright devastating to the brain, and as I mentioned at the outset, to the heart. It's literally like going to war with oneself. And I'm often asked, why is it so hard to leave this organization? I know Jesus never cared about beards. I know generations don't overlap. I know they're a real estate company. I know. Why can't I just leave? Why is it so damn hard? In the interest of time, I'll share what Dr. Winnell says here. She continues by saying, quote, "For most people, the religious environment was a one-stop shop for meeting all their major needs: social support, a coherent worldview, meaning and direction in life, structured activities, and emotional, spiritual satisfaction. Leaving the fold means multiple losses, including the loss of friends and family support at a crucial time of personal transition. Consequently, it is very lonely, stressful life event, more so than others described on Axis 4 in the DSM," end quote for a moment. That is the Psychologist Handbook. I want to emphasize, she calls it devastating. The quote continues, "For some people, depending on their personality and the details of their religious past, it may be possible to simply stop participating in religious services and activities and move on with life. But for many, leaving their religion means debilitating anxiety, depression, grief, and anger. Making the break is for many the most disruptive, difficult upheaval they have ever gone through in life. To understand this fully, one must appreciate the totality of a religious worldview that defines and controls reality in the way that fundamentalist groups do. Everything about the world, past, present, and future, is explained. The meaning of life is laid out. Morality is already decided, and individuals must find their place in the cosmic scheme in order to be worthwhile. The promises for conformity and obedience are great, and the threats for disobedience are dire, both for the present life and the hereafter. End quote. An incredibly powerful comment by a mental health professional with a PhD on all things religious trauma syndrome. I don't need to ask anyone listening if any of that sounded familiar. It may have made you uncomfortable. You may have felt it in your solar plexus, in your gut. And it's all enforced by the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses with the threat that they can get everyone you've ever loved to shun you for the rest of your life. I started out by saying this won't be easy, and I'm sorry, it won't. There isn't an answer for this. And I've always found it just a tiny bit challenging for me personally because I'm kind of one of the other people. I didn't care. I want to be transparent. And that's why I'm trying to have empathy and compassion. Trust me, I've been in therapy for that personally. I just didn't care about losing them all or any of it. I didn't want them. But it is different for all of us. Most of us, if not all of us, this guy included, suffer from religious trauma syndrome in some way or another when they leave Jehovah's Witnesses. And I did in different ways, including the ongoing fight I have to this day with mortality, something I never considered. I thought I was going to live forever and meet my guy Noah. Just the options, and just know that any decision a younger Jehovah's Witness makes, it's going to be difficult either way. Only you can weigh out all of those options and decide what's best for you. Bearing my own soul, once I realized I was living a lie, I decided to leave. I have a weird thing about authenticity. It has to be real. I don't like fake stuff. I've brought it up before. People go to Vegas and take pictures in front of the Paris casino and say, look, I'm in front of the Eiffel Tower. No, you're not. It's not the real Eiffel Tower. It was surprisingly easy for me. And I share that only to say we're all so different. Most don't find it easy. In the end, it's important for a younger Jehovah's Witness at any age to know this because it will most always involve sacrifices. Sacrifices that you are going to feel for the rest of your life. I can't offer any concrete answers. I can only offer validation and a hug. I'll hand out a hug anytime, anywhere. It's tough. And just know that it's not easy. The next thing that I've seen as a pattern that many younger people seem to ask about or feel can often be equally difficult, maybe even most difficult. And it's this. We'll call it number 2. In most cases, you have to come to terms with the fact that the people that introduced you to Jehovah's Witnesses, at that heart level, they meant well. I'm going to let that hang in the air a little bit because I know it can be hard to swallow. For most of us, it was our parents. And now that we're older and our parents are elderly, we realize that they truly thought they were doing the right thing, giving us a chance to live forever in a paradise earth. There's a very good chance the person that brought you into this organization are nothing more than kind, idealistic, loving people searching for answers to life's problems like everybody else. Remember, these people were oftentimes, that doesn't even apply. They were once young people too, looking for purpose. And all it took to get their attention, like all of us, was a few pretty illustrations in a magazine that featured young people cuddling animals and the prospect of living forever eating kiwi. The governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses have been skilled hunters for well over a century. They know human nature. It's not an accident. And many good people have walked right into their trap, and that includes the people who likely helped you get into the trap with them. Who among us doesn't want to give those we love the very best of everything? Nowhere is this more true, in most cases, not all, in most, than our parents. They created us. They're older than us. They're the people that probably took us to the Kingdom Hall for the first time, or perhaps they still are this week. But know that in most cases, those very people mean well. And that can be really hard to come to terms with. Despite how a young Jehovah's Witness feels today about the religion, most older generations, that could include your parents or a Bible study or a mentor, they fully invested and believed in things like this. From the Watchtower of 1983, April 15th, page 20, paragraph 13, they were told, quote, "Think what you could do in a righteous new order of peace and prosperity with a perfect mind and body and never dying. How many things you have wanted to do, but you could not take the time or could not afford it. Think of exploring and enjoying the majestic mountains, the refreshing forests, the flower-decked fields and gardens, the fascinating animal life, the sparkling streams and lakes free from pollution, the delicious foods of different peoples. Consider the talents that men and women will develop in craftsmanship, architecture, landscaping, home decorating, artistry, and music. Without a doubt, mankind will be stimulated to new heights of expression and beauty." End quote. Watchtower, 1983. Any loving parent or mentor or older person or minister who found you at their door, at your door, at your door, they want everyone that they care about to be a part of such a paradise. They want everyone to be there. Parents, or even those that we might consider spiritual parents that conducted a Bible study with us, spend a great deal of time worrying about their children. It's natural. The governing body's tapped into it. I've told my kids that I never knew worry until they came along. Life changes the second you have a baby. You never sleep as good. It's over. The last good night of sleep I ever got was before the birth of my firstborn. After that, forget about it. Parents and people who love us want the best for us. And now, because of that dynamic, many younger Jehovah's Witnesses have told me that they grapple with the resentment they feel towards those that expose them to this religion. And straight talk here, that includes me. I got some feelings I still try to work through. While my logical mind knows all of this is true in my own life with my own mother and extended JW relatives that encouraged her to become a JW, the little kid that still lives in me and likely in you may have moments where you're really pissed off at them. You're really pissed. And you're thinking about what could have been or should have been. I'm here to tell you it's okay. It's natural. And you're not alone. As you pull that string and you unwind all of these emotions, you're going to have an uncomfortable epiphany. And the epiphany is this. Those same people that introduced you to all this, they were once young Jehovah's Witnesses too. Or they were young people who were introduced to Jehovah's Witnesses. Maybe they had no one to talk to about the decision at the time. Maybe they just needed to feel loved, and this filled the gap. It's really so emotional, and it's so much more deep or deeper than just saying, "Why'd you introduce me to this crap?" But if you're struggling with this, or resentment towards those that expose you to this cult is eating away at you, just give it time. I know that's just a canned answer, but it's really the only answer. Be kind to yourself And might I add, extend the kindness to them, even if they don't deserve it, even if it isn't just an honest mistake. I won't say anymore, you will realize some things all by yourself. It's not my place to suggest anything. We're all so different. I could learn from you. But I can confidently say this, and I hope that you will think about it if this is something you're struggling with. In the end, introducing you to Jehovah's Witnesses was something that they probably meant well by. They thought they were saving you. Keep it in mind. There is one little thing that will be a constant, we'll call it number 3, that many grapple with, and I want you to give consideration to. And it's, in my opinion, one of the things that truly identifies Jehovah's Witnesses, and it's one word. And that word is change. This can be really uncomfortable. Change is uncomfortable, especially considering that your intellect kicks in, that heart and head battle. In the Bible's own words on Jehovah himself at Malachi 3:6 of the New World Translation tell a Jehovah's Witness this, quote, "For I am Jehovah, I do not change," end quote. Or how about James 1:17 of the New World Translation, which says, quote, "Every good gift and every perfect present is from above, coming down from the Father of the celestial lights, who does not vary or change like the shifting shadows," end quote. And yet here we are. And I see it in letters to myself and notes to myself and conversations, calls. As a younger Jehovah's Witness, you have likely seen that one thing is constant with Jehovah, Jesus and his organization. Despite what the Bible says, if you're a Jehovah's Witness, they're constantly changing. Maybe it was this itself that drew you to listening to this podcast or other podcasts or YouTubes or many others. Maybe you can't quiet the voice in your head that is saying, something doesn't feel right. I'm not here going to try to talk you into seeing things my way. I got out of that business a long time ago. I read to you from the New World Translation itself. If you are someone here that still believes the Bible is inspired, or should, in the very least in your mind, obey the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses, then you likely can't shake that everything in this organization is constantly changing. I'm not going to bore listeners with a list of changes that are longer than my leg. I have entire episodes dedicated to each of them as a standalone subject. But naming just a few that are critical to a Jehovah's Witness, how about these? Generations, the blood doctrine. Who really is the faithful and discreet slave? Who and when can you survive the Great Tribulation? Who can be part of the 144,000? I could keep going. All central doctrines to your faith if you're a witness, and all of them have changed in the last 20 to 30 years, which insinuates that Jehovah and Jesus were teaching you false things for almost, or if not better than a century, and just ignoring it until they wanted to change them. On the silly end, there are things like beards, women wearing pants, men wearing neckties, counting field service time, and so many more. All of them have changed in recent months. Change is a constant in this organization, even when the Bible says Jehovah never changes. Oh, the battle inside your mind, my mind. And as a as a side point, and one I hope everyone reflects on, even when they call it new light, that's the thing they say, it's just new light, they're actually looking you in the eye and admitting it's new. Therefore, it's a change. Every single day inside the governing body itself is seen as a potential last day. The governing body itself is constantly changing. In the last 24 months, they've added 4 new men and fired another one. Can you begin to imagine how everyone would have reacted if Jehovah changed his mind about Noah at the last second and replaced him with some new guy? Would his 7 family members have listened? Would they have finished building the ark with him? Would they have helped the new guy chase down a couple of aardvarks in his absence? Would you have even believed the new guy? Couldn't be a woman, by the way, after all. We all know that. Let's call the new guy Bob. Bob, if he said, forget getting 2 penguins, I need you to find me 2 each of the 15,700 ant species that are on Earth. Oh, wait a minute. How did the ants make it? Okay. I guess that's a bad illustration since Noah had to do that anyway. That's why we have ants, folks. Ever thought about it? But if a new face showed up and took over like it does on the governing body today, would you have listened? I know this is absurd. And there is a peak inside my head when I talk like this. It's a busy place. But Jehovah's Witnesses today are doing this regularly with change on the ever-aging members of the governing body itself. Change is a constant in this organization. If you are a younger Jehovah's Witness listening and struggling right now, how do you feel about the change, the many changes? When you compare what the Bible says about change versus the governing body, how and what do you find? No one should answer that for you. But the proof is right there. Change is a constant, and I often see it as one of the messages I get with younger people struggling on what to do next. But how about another? We'll call this, what are we at? Number 4? Let's call it 4. Here is something you may be struggling with, but I'm here to tell you it's okay to admit. It's still weird to say, though. Are you ready? There are actually a few good things about this religion. I know. Where else could you learn about Noah? Well, you can learn here weekly if you need to. He's my guy. He's their guy, so he became my guy. But there are actually a few good things about this religion, and that may gnaw at you. I'm sure you can think of a few. If you have any doubts, I'm here to tell you that it's okay to recognize that. It's okay. There are some good things. There are things about the organization that we can put in the positive column. Does each and every Jehovah's Witness practice positive things? No, that's a fact. You can probably think of a few names in your own congregation, but some do. And while it may seem like I'm straining to come up with examples, allow me to share a few I considered when I was weighing the possibility of leaving the organization. Here are a few of mine that I put in the positive column and I grappled with when making my decision. Some of the kindest people, particularly women I have ever met, were Jehovah's Witnesses. They were incredible people. And they would have been no matter where they were on the planet. Admittedly, many of my examples were older ones or older women and sisters, and I know that, or so I've been told, is getting rarer in today's organization, but there was a time when sisters were truly the warmth in the congregation. They were warm. They were like a giant hug. They took an interest in kids and younger sisters. Not all of them. We can think of the ones that didn't. I know that isn't unique to Jehovah's Witnesses, but it was my experience, and it was in my positive column as a good thing in the religion. And I'm going to try to rattle off a few more. Here's some things that have come to my mind over the years. Being a Jehovah's Witness taught me discipline, particularly with intellectual things. I was always a big reader. I still love to read. Maybe you are too, but learning to read, think, and communicate were all honed in this guy inside Jehovah's Witnesses. Sure, the teachings are incredibly wrong, silly. Some of them are nothing more than fables. I could go on. But learning the discipline to be on time, to be dependable, know what I'm talking about. And for me, public speaking, I did a lot of it at the highest levels in the organization were all positive things I learned and I took from Jehovah's Witnesses. And I had to make this list because when I left, I was raging. I was so angry. I couldn't find anything good, so it took time. But what it means to commit to something can be found inside the organization. Yes, even if it's misguided, we learned the art of committing to things. And then the other thing, most importantly, and perhaps the most difficult thing for many of us who leave to give up, is that sense of community. I put that in the positive column. And it's probably defined differently by each of us. But that feeling of belonging and of working with other people for a common purpose are integral parts of the human experience. And Jehovah's Witnesses provide their own version of community. One can go as far as saying that they've created an elite version, at least in their own minds, right? It's the same basic need that all humans have. We learn it from the time we're kids. We want to fit in the neighborhood with the other kids. For example, Little League baseball teams, the same ones the youth book said were off limits. It creates a void in a person's life, a void that they fill with their sense of community. And it even includes coming together multiple times a week. It includes special titles like elder, pioneer, missionary, so on and so forth. That sense of community is a positive. Maybe it doesn't start that way, but I'm sure that one of the things almost everyone misses when they leave, and may even be keeping you as a younger JW there, is that sense of community. It's insulating and it's suffocating, and that's not an accident. Is it fair to include this on my positive things about the religion list? Maybe not, considering you can find the same sense of purpose with much greater depth and real things in many other places. However, when you miss out on the others because they told you you couldn't do them, you can learn a sense of community inside Jehovah's Witnesses. And that is incredibly painful to give up. The sense of special community permeates the culture and is just a living hell to walk away from for most people. And I've seen this over the years in what people have told me. As a small example of this, I don't need to remind any former Jehovah's Witness of our own brand of inside jokes. Yeah, who else is going to laugh about chaperones with you? Who else can sit around and make pornea jokes with you? No one else even knows what pornea means. Who else would understand how bad their music and songs are to sing at the Kingdom Hall? Remember the molesting bees? How else would we guys have learned to tie a necktie back in the day? Are you ever going to find another group of people obsessed with measuring the slit in a sister's skirt like they used to? Or what about the evils of double ear piercings? Despite the laughs, the discipline, and learning to study, it doesn't dismiss the fact that it's all a lie and that there are many more very bad things. But we understand the laughs, and that glues people together. We all need to learn how to get up early on the weekends like we did for field service, right? That's a good habit, but it doesn't dismiss the beautiful faces of those who we knew who died when all they needed was a blood transfusion. It doesn't balance it out. Or those we shunned, who were simply smart enough to make a few mistakes on their journey. There is much more bad than there is good. And I'm here to tell you that while the sense of community is very difficult for a younger JW to give up, you will find a new one. And then there is this to consider on all of these matters. There are wonderful people trapped inside this religion. You're one of them. Everyone has their own reasons. Try to remember that. Everyone's journey is different. It's okay to love people and disagree with them at the same time. I want to remind most of those listening that many of us were once Jehovah's Witnesses. I will boldly say that I think we're good people. We're pretty good people. We're flawed, but we're pretty good people. Please keep in mind, if you're a younger J-Dub with all of this weighing on your heart, that there are many more good people inside that organization. When a younger J-Dub is examining the religion, I found that some of us just need to hear that it's okay to recognize that those who currently associate inside Jehovah's Witnesses, many of them are really good people. They aren't stupid because they can't see the obvious. They're not evil, but oftentimes good-hearted people who are trapped inside something that is both stupid and evil are struggling themselves. It's not the people. It's the thing. And there is a difference. And it's more than okay to validate that if you're someone struggling with that. This has very little to do with the people. The people are just like you and I. Love is always the answer, even when we disagree. Respect the disagreement and be kind. The true pain, I should say, lies in that they may shun you if you leave. That's just a reality. How you react to that can be the catalyst for waking them up. Keep that in mind. I wish there was an easier way, but there isn't. And then finally, why don't we call this, let's call this number 5 on my list of things in my message to younger J-Dubs. How do you feel when you think about Jehovah's Witnesses? How do you feel now? Personally, at that heart level, the same heart that was described at the outset. How do you feel? Don't answer that quickly. I want to encourage you to sit with it for a bit. If you're struggling with what to do next, or if you're just experiencing doubts, I always lean into that one question. How do you feel as a Jehovah's Witness? How are you feeling physically, emotionally, mentally? When you arrive at the answer or your conclusion, ask yourself why. As a reminder, if you still consider yourself a believer or a Christian, and you're here and you're still a Jehovah's Witness, the Bible that you hold dear tells you how you should be feeling. And it comes directly from Jesus. And while I quote this a lot, I encourage you, like a big warm hug, to really give this some thought. Jesus tells you how you should be feeling. At Matthew 11, 28 and 29 of the New World Translation, where he told his followers, in this case Jehovah's Witnesses, quote, "Come to me, all you who are toiling and loaded down, and I will refresh you. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am mild-tempered and lowly in heart, and you will find refreshment for yourselves. For my yoke is kindly, and my load is light." End quote. When you think about your life as a Jehovah's Witness, is that how you feel? Do you feel relieved from heavy loads, from life's pressures? Do you feel like your life as a Jehovah's Witness is a light load? Do you feel refreshed? If not, why? Jesus said that's how you'd feel. Some things to think about. I started out by saying this was a message to younger Jehovah's Witnesses, and frankly, what constitutes young is basically everyone. It wasn't just kids, it's everyone. Especially since you likely believe you will live to be billions of years old. You're still hanging on to that belief. I'm not here to shatter it. I just share the facts. But why did I address this to younger Jehovah's Witnesses? Why am I using that phrase? Because as of today, this moment, anyone younger than me, anyone that is considered young, they have something most of us only have in limited supply. And it really hurts to say it. What is it? Time. Let me be brutally candid. And I'm going to admit it's really tough for me to say out loud. For many of us, time isn't on our side anymore. Ugh. My solar plexus punch. Frankly, none of us can get back the time we dedicated to Jehovah's Witnesses. With each passing second, we are faced with the reality that we dedicated all that lost time to an organization that believes invisible angels are hovering over their book carts. And based on the results, failing miserably at it, I might add. I often wonder if the angels have had enough and are only hanging on for the fireworks show at Armageddon, where they too get to get involved in killing all the rest of us that didn't want a book from their book cart. The point is, you can't hold on to time. And you can't get it back. You can't go buy it anywhere. There's no refund policy. And it's that right there that makes me feel passionate, my own heart, about sharing this brain dump, and that's all this episode is a brain dump, with younger Jehovah's Witnesses. And listen, real talk. With each second, it just gets worse. Time speeds up as you age. From the reference, the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences of the United States of America for September 2008, we're told this, quote, psychologists have found that the subjective perception of the passing of time tends to speed up with increasing age in humans. This often causes people to increasingly underestimate a given interval of time as they age. This fact can likely be attributed to a variety of age-related changes in the aging brain, such as the lowering in dopaminergic, hope I'm saying that correctly, levels with older age, basically dopamine. Quote, however, the details are still being debated. The common explanation is that the most external and internal experiences are new for young children, but repetitive for adults. Children have to be extremely engaged, for example, dedicate many neural resources or significant brain power in the present moment because they must constantly reconfigure their mental models of the world to assimilate it and manage behavior properly. Adults, however, may rarely need to step outside mental habits and external routines. When an adult frequently experiences the same stimuli, such stimuli may seem invisible as a result of having already been sufficiently mapped by the brain. This phenomenon is known as neural adaptation. In other words, in layman's terms, end quote, by the way, in layman's terms, time speeds up because we've already done stuff. So if you're a younger Jehovah's Witness and you're at this crossroads and you're truly contemplating what to do with the rest of your life, no matter what that age is, it's just younger than me, it all qualifies. Just remember that you've likely experienced the best of what you will ever do as a Jehovah's Witness. Moving forward in the organization, it's just repetition. Take this as you will from someone that left for good after 42 years old, and I'm now 57. Time speeds up. The organization just gets repetitive. You won't get the time back. Consider your future. Consider tomorrow. And do it now. You see, life is meant to be enjoyed today, not in the future. It's meant to be enjoyed today. And if you're a Jehovah's Witness bravely listening, how about hearing it from God himself? Ecclesiastes 8:15 of the New World Translation told us this, quote, "So I recommended rejoicing, because there is nothing better for man under the sun than to eat and drink and rejoice. This should accompany him as he works hard during the days of his life, which the true God gives him under the sun." End quote. Life is meant to be enjoyed. You should have passion, joy, and fun every day where possible, not in the future. It's so important for a younger Jehovah's Witness to consider that. Anything to the contrary is going against what your God you believe in, at least in this moment, has already told you. I've always also liked this quote. I just want an excuse to throw it in somewhere in my life, from Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. when he said this, quote, "Through our great good fortune in our youth, our hearts were touched with fire. It was given to us to learn at the outset that life is a profound and passionate thing." End quote. Yeah, that same heart that the Insight book described. It should burn with fire. It should be profound, passionate, joyful. Not in the future, today. I bring up all of these things in my own long-winded way as the biggest brain dump in the history of this show, because I was inspired by many communications I got in the last couple weeks through the holidays. So many younger Jehovah's Witnesses struggling with what to do next. I want to say this. You have time on your side. Even if you leave due to doubts, your Jehovah's Witness trained teaching now says that you can return during the Great Tribulation and be saved into the same paradise earth at the last minute, when Stephen, Let, David, Splain, and all those guys are most obviously the only true religion left on earth. That's their teaching. You have a guarantee in place. What are you waiting for? Why wouldn't you take that guarantee, that new doctrinal teaching, and today go enjoy life, travel, get an education, date a variety of people, explore your sexuality if you've been keeping it stifled, make a few dollars, help others without any ulterior motives or counting the time? Why not do it? It's not like you're losing out on what Jehovah's Witnesses are teaching you. As of the last annual meeting, you can make the decision last second to join them. Think about it. If you're thinking about an exit in any of the things I've shared with you here today, or any of these particular things that I see commonalities in my conversations, so I summarized them. If you see any of them as a roadblock, I hope you're going to give something your consideration. But if none of this has made an impression or given you something to think about, I'm going to conclude like only I can with sharing how you might do it in a little different way. It's just me. I want to tell you to go grab some headphones or some earbuds, whatever it might be. Sit yourself down in a quiet room, stare out the window, and go to Spotify, YouTube, whatever it might be that you have access to, and find Pink Floyd. Find the song Time off the Dark Side of the Moon album. It is a masterpiece. If you can listen, please listen. If not, consider some of the lyrics that I find incredibly profound for a young Jehovah's Witness. The song says this, quote, "Tired of lying in the sunshine, staying home to watch the rain. You are young and life is long, and there is time to kill today. And then one day you find 10 years have got behind you. No one told you when to run. You missed the starting gun. And you run to catch up with the sun, but it's sinking, racing around to come up behind you again. The sun is the same in a relative way, but you're older, shorter of breath, and one day closer to death. End quote. If you are a younger Jehovah's Witness, please don't waste another day. If any of these things are things you're struggling with, make a decision that's in your best interest, one that will lead you to happiness now. The sun will rise tomorrow and the next day. But if you waste time, you'll begin to notice that everything is looking a little different. I want to thank you for joining me this week. Wherever you may be well.